when he told me that we're going to build a Christian school, I said, Dad, we don't have enough money to finish a church building. What are you talking about? Start a school. Did you sleep well?
Hey, welcome into another edition of Making the Leap. Glad to have you along for another story that I think is going to inspire you. We talk all the time about churches and what we hope would be their role in furthering Christian education. So many churches have buildings or availability, but they don't really think outside the box. Can we educate kids maybe here in our own building?
Right.
What if before you even start doing that, heaven forbid, you lose your church entirely? What if it catches fire and you lose it and you were planning on starting a school, but you didn't even get a chance?
Right. And then you have to start with the rebuild, right, of the church, you would think.
Yeah. So our colleagues over at The Lion wrote a story, profiled just such a story out of Bloomington, Illinois. And you will be fascinated to hear this because long before Victory Church ever decided to start a school, it caught fire.
Right.
And they lost the whole building. But now they're back and they're rebuilt and they're starting their school right out of the gate.
I love it. I think it's actually, I'm excited to have this conversation because everybody always talks about the what ifs. What if, how are we going to do this? What's it going to look like? But when you're starting from a blank slate,
imagine your
kind
church burning to the,
right.
Some people complain, I don't know about the halls and the cleaning. What if you had no church? Yeah. So we bring in the head of this brand new school, which we're excited to talk about all the specifics. It's called Foundation Christian Academy. Mm-hmm. It's inside Victory Church in Bloomington, Illinois. And Jarrod Herald joins us today as head of school there and also part of the pastorate team there at Victory Church. Jarrod, real pleasure to welcome you to the show.
Thank you all for having me. It's a great time to be here with you.
I would imagine. So here we are in the fall, kind of the kickoff of the new season. You guys, you give me the time span here. Your church caught fire is kind of where I need to start. And you guys, I was reading that your dad had sort of had a vision to start a school, and then the whole church catches fire. So walk us through that first.
Yeah, so it was January 10th of 2022 that our church, Victory Church in Bloomington, Illinois, experienced a fire. And the fire actually destroyed about a third of the building, and the rest was destroyed by smoke and heat and water from putting it out. And 24,000 square feet, we lost the whole thing. And we were hoping that we can, salvage some of it, but the expense to demo versus remediate was just astronomical. So we decided to take the whole thing down and rebuild fresh. And fast forward about a year, we started reconstruction, and my father has a dream. And in that dream, he sees the word indifference. And we've had some major hurdles in our reconstruction phase. You're talking about almost a $4 million building, and our insurance was great. They helped us through the whole process and was great to work with. But when you talk about inflation, the stuff related to the delays and expenses caused by COVID, labor rates, things like that, it's astronomical, the amount to rebuild, even after insurance. So he had this dream, and in the dream he saw the word indifference. And from that word, he woke up and said, God, what do you mean by this word? And he said that he looked it up and listened to the Holy Spirit. And the Lord, he said that the word indifference for a believer is that we are indifferent to anything but the will of God. So my father asked the Lord, then what are we doing that you're wanting us to do different? What do we need to do different? And the Lord responded and said, I want you to build me a Christian school.
Wow.
And when my dad and I had talked about this, we laugh about it now, but I'm his executive pastor for the church. And when he told me that we're going to build a Christian school, I said, Dad, we don't have enough money to finish a church building. What are you talking about? Start a school. Did you sleep well? So we wrestled with it for about 3 or 4 months. And then one Sunday, because right now we're actually meeting in a private Christian school here in Bloomington for our services while our building is being completed. And he was on his way with my mother to get ready to preach. And the Lord said, I want you to tell the church what I told you. And so he told my mom, hey, the Lord told me to tell the church we're going to start a Christian school. And she did what any senior pastor's wife would say. She said, don't do that.
Are you, let me press on this a minute, because I wonder for people that listen in, maybe who are believers, but maybe aren't familiar with that experience, or maybe those who aren't believers and don't know what that means at all, and are maybe even skeptical. What does it mean to you? I think this is important, because we actually throw this around a lot on the show. People say that, they heard
the Lord spoke,
or the Holy Spirit moved. What does that mean to you? Can you explain that for people that maybe either not had that experience or maybe don't believe at all?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it comes down to trust. That the fact that we believe that the Lord is fully active today as he was when the church was first born. And we believe that as we trust him, as we put our hope and our faith in him, that as he confirms with his voice, with the move of his Spirit, that we're going to obey and we're going to respond with courage, that this is what he wants to do. As in this case, my father spoke to the Lord by a dream, and then confirmed again through the word. And even the building itself catching fire, and the only thing being left that we could use was the foundation. The architect had told us that there was a challenge because the previous building, which was only 18 years old at the time, was wind rated at 90 miles per hour. And if the building had to completely come down, we would be no longer grandfathered in. And so that impacted the foundation and the footings. Well, the previous building was built on a solid foundation and could withstand the new ratings of 150 miles per hour.
Wow.
And that's where we got the name of the school. And we're building on a fresh vision as a church body. The church is still going strong, even through 2.5 years of rebuild. But at the same time, we're now launching a school with 20 students, with a principal, with staff. And we just stepped out in faith because we are obedient to the voice of the Lord. There have been blessings that have flowed in to bless the church and the school.
When your father tells your mother, this is what I'm being told to do, and she says no, and then he turns around and does obviously eventually talk to the congregation. What was their response? How does that congregation, who's already in the middle of a lot of turmoil, how do they respond to that?
I'm so glad you asked, because my mom, she said, don't do that, but we laugh at it now. My dad still, when he hears from the Lord, he's going to do it. It doesn't matter if it seems controversial or, a major step of faith. Well, he did. And it was an eruption of encouragement, a standing ovation from our church. We actually had people coming up to us at the end of the service going, and we didn't know this, but they were praying for another Christian school in our community. And here we are, the ones in the midst of a rebuild from a devastating fire, to say we're going to also step up and launch a school. And our community already has some private Christian schools in the region, so we're blessed to join the ranks of those. But there's still a major need to evangelize the lost and use Christian education to do it.
That gives me goosebumps that, your father's listening to one voice. You have parents that are in desperate need, and they're in desperate need because you're sitting in Illinois. And I don't want to bash Illinois. I'm from Illinois, born and raised, but they're struggling when it comes to education in some major ways. And that I would guess that has to be a player in this conversation for all those parents that are giving you that standing ovation.
Absolutely. In the past 10 years, 250,000 public school students have been removed at one point or another from the public school system in the state of Illinois alone. And in Bloomington, Normal, which is about 150,000 people, right in the middle of the state, crossroads of Illinois, there are a number of private schools, like I said, but there is also a major movement of homeschoolers and the need for churches to step up with their facilities to use it, whether it's a daycare, a preschool, or a full K through 12. It's time for the church to step up and do some radical things. And our church has been kind of known for going against the grain at times and being on the forefront of things. And I mean, how many churches do you know caught fire and in the middle of the rebuild say, hey, by the way, we're also going to start a school? You know, it's a risk. It takes courage. It takes faith. But let me tell you, it is worth it when you see the tears flowing down a parent's face when they got to remove their child from an indoctrinated system that is failing their students, especially in the state of Illinois. And now they get to have chapel every day. They get to be taught the gospel every day. They get to have a solid education, and the church gets to be a part of that.
I love that. The solid education. We talk a lot about biblical worldview with a lot of the schools, and I think that is most important. But I also think with it, in various forms, comes that solid education. And Illinois is one of the states, I believe, that kind of has that we're just going to push the kids on policy. We're not going to worry about if they've mastered things, if they know things, if they've learned what they're supposed to learn. And I think to have that success, we have to care about the child's soul first, but the academics are that second piece. And nobody wants their fifth grader, sixth grader not knowing how to read or how to do the basics in order to become those functioning, adults of society. And so I think it's good to hear that's kind of the approach for everything. It's not just about academics, or it's not just about, it's everything combined.
Yeah, it's so well said. And Jarrod, you guys think outside the box too at Foundation Christian Academy. I like that I was reading in this story, you have set tuition rates, and this is something that we hear often from parents that are considering, gosh, I'd really like to make the leap and pull my child and put them in Christian school, but the cost. Certainly we understand that. Everything's so expensive. It's a terrible time economically for a lot of folks anyway, and so they think, I just can't afford that right now. You guys do something where the expectation is we want parental involvement, and if you can go one further and even volunteer your time, that can help the parent maybe reduce those costs. Could you explain?
Absolutely. When we first decided that we were going to launch a school, we said, because like I said, we have public school, private school, and homeschool in our community, but also very well represented in our own church. We said we wanted it to be affordable, but we also wanted to return the discipleship and the education of their child to the home. Mm-hmm. So we want parents to be directly involved. Every parent that has a registered child in our school is required 15 hours of volunteer time a year. Or if we worked with them regarding their tuition, to come and be a part of the team, help volunteer, whether that's being a room mom or dad, or helping out with being a PE teacher, or teaching some kind of curriculum or a project. There's room for the parents to participate in this. And I'm just going to speak for the state of Illinois. Parents really are not allowed in the schools anymore.
Right.
Whether that's to come and sit down and visit and see what their kids are learning, ours is totally open. If you want to come and sit with your child, come on. We'll put you to work, and we'll be a part of this together, because that's how it's supposed to be. Education's supposed to be in the parents' control, and total transparency for the parents to know what's going on. And so that's kind of our model. We're going to discover, as we grow as a school, the more and more parents that are going to be hungry to be a part and hands-on again in their child's education.
I think that partnership is one of the most important components that has gotten lost over the last, I've seen it decline greatly over the last 15 to 20 years with our own children, where I was welcomed in with open arms when my oldest were little. And then by the time it progressed, it became harder and harder, and COVID kind of shut a lot of that down. So I think that's something that parents are craving, is those that want to be involved want to actually be involved. And so I think that's huge. What is your dynamic? What's the demographic for these students that that are starting in your first year? You're opening your doors. What grade levels are you looking at? How do you have your structure set up?
Yeah, and where do most of these kids come from? Jarrod, I'll throw that question in on top of that. Where are the kids and the families coming from that are coming into your school?
Yeah. So when we first started, we were pretty zealous. We were like, we got 4 classrooms for our new building, and we're going to fill them. No more than 15 kids per classroom, and that's still our model. We want the teacher to student ratio to be small, so that kids can get the one-on-one attention that they need. But as we began to open enrollment, we discovered, we need to tone back a little bit. So I would encourage any church or school that opens is really, there's a zeal and an excitement, but, ask the Lord for guidance, get the foundations and other associations on board, mentors to help encourage you along the way, that know what they're doing. And so we decided to go we had opened pre-K 3 through 12th grade. I mean, we were going after it. But once enrollment started, we decided, it's better for us to refocus this to kindergarten through 6th grade. And as soon as we did that, enrollment even doubled to 20 kids. And we're thankful because, honestly, if we were at 60 kids right now, which is what we are aiming for, we'd be a little bit more overwhelmed. Those kids are from multi-ethnic backgrounds. They're from, some are transferring from other private schools. Some were homeschooling and were struggling, so they're coming. And there's a good percentage that are transferring from public school. And the parents are just grateful to have their child in a Christ-centered environment.
It's interesting reading about you, Jarrod, if I read it correctly, that beautiful family on the wall behind you that we see, you homeschool them, if I read correctly. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah, my wife and I, my wife's name is Elizabeth. We've been married 19 years, and we've got 6 children, as you can see in the background. Our oldest, Rachel, just graduated high school through our homeschool, and is going to a school of missions in Catoosa, Oklahoma. And so, that even it's interesting because I'm head of school and we're going to still homeschool our children because that's the ministry model for our household that works for us. And not every family can do that. So, which is another thing that's in my heart for this school is, not every family can homeschool. Not every family wants to send their kids to an expensive private school or wants to get them out of public school. So now we have an option for them. So
that's an interesting component to your story. You said that not everybody can or maybe chooses to homeschool. There's always been kind of a friendly, I'm not going to call it
rivalry,
negative, but it's I think homeschoolers would often say, maybe you'd say that that's the preference, that's the way you should go, that ultimately, what's the difference, I guess I'll ask you, Jarrod, between you and your wife homeschooling your children versus the school you're running there at Foundation?
Great question. It comes down to the model that it is. There are parents that are bringing their kids in that it might be a single mom, and she's got to work 2 or 3 jobs, but she doesn't want her child in public education. They might come from a background where the homeschooling thing just wasn't working for them because some of them were pulled out of public school, but they weren't grown up in the homeschool model. And my kids, that's all they've known. And we're a ministry family, so that's another dynamic that all of us serve at Victory Church together. Like my 2 older kids, they're worship leaders at the church, and they're only 18 and 16 years old. One of my sons helps with the video production. So, that's just kind of our model. I think every family really needs to reconsider if they're not in private Christian education or homeschool. They really need to count the cost when it comes to their child and making an investment, whether it is the homeschool cost or private education. For us, we lowered our tuition to $4,200 for the year, and we're at the bottom of private education costs in our community. But when you break it down over 10 months, $420 a month for your child to have, a great Christian education, it's just incredible of the opportunity that's there. But for my family, just the homeschool model is what we decided before we even had kids. And now the Lord has decided for our church to start a school at the same time. So it is our goal to actually have some kind of homeschool co-op connected to our school as well.
I think that's tremendous. And I think it's something that we've often said, just between Chris and I, as we talked about our own kids, what we should have done, would have done, could have done differently. You can't sit in the middle of regret all the time. So we started where we were, and we moved one of our children from public school over to a private school setting. Always kind of, well, I don't want to say always, more recently tossed around the idea of homeschooling initially when things kind of got really bad. It didn't feel right at the time. And even now, I think, well, I don't know. I might still switch it up. I doubt it, but I think we always, I think what we're learning now too, what you're saying for families is that we need to be listening. We need to be listening to God first and foremost. We need to be letting that conviction of that Holy Spirit guide us. But also knowing it's not a one size fits all in education. That's kind of the problem that I think is in education right now, is that what we do for one, we have to do for everybody. And we can't sometimes in education. Every child has different needs. Every family has different needs. And I think it's interesting too, as I read in that article that was shared through the Lion, you're also offering some pretty unique courses or, experiences. And I don't know if I want to call them classes, but what are some of those? Can you share a little bit about that? Because again, I think this is some of that out of the box thinking that parents and churches, pastors, heads of school, they need to know can be options.
Absolutely. Some of the things that you're referring to is that we wanted to put a solid focus on life skills, the arts, and even different languages in ours. And we're a traditional K through 6 school right now. So it's 8 a.m. to 3:15. And it's pretty solid structure for our schedule. Throughout the week, they'll actually be in chapel time every day. They'll have physical education every day. Of course, public school systems are not doing those things. PE might be every other. But the life skills we want to return, and this is where return back to our school, but this is where parents can really get involved. Hey, what are you gifted at? How does God created you and called you to? And let's create that as an extracurricular or life skill opportunity for our students, whether they're kindergarten or 6th grade. So this year, we've got an individual in our church that translates our services into Spanish. So she's going to come and start doing a Spanish class right off the get-go. We have another individual in our church that knows sign language, so she's going to teach sign language. We're on our property. We're going to build a garden, and we're going to let the kids get their hands dirty and learn what a garden is, tending to it, raising vegetables, canning, all of that. I'm a beekeeper, so one day I hope to actually have an apiary on the property to where the older kids can come and learn about bees and the creation, and that bees by themselves totally debunk the evolution theory.
Yes.
Just by themselves. And the honey's delicious. So, stuff like that. What does it look like for, our 5th graders to learn how to read a tape measure and build a wall and learn carpentry skills? These are things that have been lost over the decades that generations ago would have already known. And we want to return that and make that an opportunity in our school.
Well, I also think it dispels that notion that, if my children go to a small school, they're not going to be exposed to as many opportunities. Whereas what you've got right in front of you, you've already talked about things that I know my children do not know. Like you've already offered things that within a school of 20 that you're able to do. And so I think you almost have to flip that and, kind of on its, just upend it a little bit for parents who think, oh, they're going to miss out. But in actuality, for these students at Foundation Christian Academy, they're not missing out at all. And in fact, they're gaining so much more. And I just think that's tremendous.
Jarrod, the thing that we have talked a lot about with pastors and families that have started church schools in their church is they're often established churches and they're making the pitch to their congregations. You have a different scenario in that you had a church that burned to the ground and a congregation that was excited. I mean,
right.
it's really a very unique dynamic anyway. But I guess I would ask you broadly, if there's anybody listening right now that has it on their heart to start their own school, here at the Herzog Foundation, one of the things that we exist to do is to put Christian schools across the country in connection with one another when trying to start a project like yours. How important is it to look into this and take advice from others rather than just, obviously you do it with prayer, but I assume having others' input? Who's doing it well? Best practices? Did you study that outside your own facility?
Absolutely. Early on, when we said that we were going to start a school, the Herzog Foundation was one that was recommended to us by another fellowship church that we connect with in Texas. And they're getting ready to start a school, and they're part of Herzog. And I cannot express enough for any pastor or church leader that is considering to start a Christian school of any size, whether they're going to start just with pre-kindergarten and then build it from there, or they're going to do a full K through 12 on the get-go. You need to have people in your corner. You need help figuring out the legal side, the insurance. What does a faculty handbook look like? How many students are you aiming for? There's 1,000 questions that need to be answered through the process. And to have people that are more experienced at it than you is a great thing. I can't express it enough. Our church is very kingdom-minded. So when it comes to Victory Church and Foundation Christian Academy, yes, we are going to reach out to those who know what they're doing and can answer some questions. My mentor through the Herzog Foundation, Max, has been fantastic. And he's close to our region and knows the state of Illinois and education, and has just been a major encouragement to me through the process. And also another thing I would recommend for your region, if you're a pastor or church leader thinking about a school, connect with the other Christian schools or homeschool co-ops already in your region, and make a network, partner together, ask questions as to make those relationships happen, because this is the church. Whether it's a school or a daycare, it's still the church, and we need each other to succeed and to make a lasting impact in the next generation. We're not just doing this school to last for a year. We're in this for the long haul, to see generations impacted with the gospel of Jesus Christ and solid education. So for us to have longevity, we have to have the right people in our corner cheering us on all the way.
Amen. Jarrod, I feel just blessed this morning, just having heard this from you, knowing that this can impact so many more people, so many more families who really, we're here for the kingdom. And I think that's just huge what you're doing. I love it. As you guys have opened your doors, as you're starting with your family, I can't wait, or, with your school family, I can't wait to hear where it goes. I think you've got a tremendous start, just knowing the background of where this came from.
We'll have to do a follow-up interview, Jarrod, and find out how it's gone after year number one. But in the meantime, people can find out more, and I assume people can reach out to you if they would like some counsel, if they've heard your story and they think, well, maybe I'll call Jarrod up. Do you mind people reaching out and asking you some questions?
Absolutely. Like I said, we're kingdom-minded, so if there's somebody listening that is inspired by our story that God is continually writing, visit foundationca.org and look us up, and be happy to answer any questions or be an encouragement to you along the way.
Well, congratulations to you guys for, one, being kingdom-minded, to two, listening to the Holy Spirit and doing wonderful, wonderful things for your community. That is so exciting, and we're thrilled for you. Jarrod, thanks a lot for your time today.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
And that, of course, is going to do it for this week's edition of the Making the Leap. I hope we'll see you again at another episode. But in the meantime, if you would be so kind as to leave a 5-star review and maybe a written review. And always, you can reach out to us on social media if you'd like, for maybe a show idea in the future. And we will see you back here next time on Making the Leap.
Making the Leap is a podcast presentation courtesy of the Herzog Foundation. We'd love your feedback by rating us and commenting on the show.
And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Making the Leap.